Awesome. We're live. Thank you once again. A very good afternoon. Wednesday, which is what we normally do. From Canningvale, Dharmindher Singh is my name. I'm one of the migration agents here with Aussizz Group. And today we're going to talk about the all-important visa that is a temporary graduate visa called the 485. And that's for students who, presuming have studied, met the requirements. We're going to talk about the eligibility requirements for that, your hard-earned exams and results that you finally got, depending on whether you've done a trade course or whether you've done a bachelor's or master's or PhD or anything of that. What is it? How is it? What do you need to know? What you need to have with you? What specific considerations that you need to really have at the time. And I'm going to talk about some case studies, real ones. This is not even something that you can imagine or make up, of how students spectacularly do this and they fail. And what happens when you fail, maybe we'll touch upon that at the time. So today, really, we're going to talk about a lot of this kind of stuff. And I'm kind of excited. Why? Because I was a student once upon a time. I'm not shy to tell you that. Everybody seemed to think that, my friend did this and I did this and I can research that, and this information is a little bit more available, if you want to call it, these days. But don't just rely on your friends. Not making a judgment on your friends, but people have applied for cases and then have been refused, and then again, when we talk about that, then you really realize how terrible that might be. So temporary graduate visa is what we're going to be talking about, the 485. So without further ado, let's talk about just two streams that you really are eligible for, and that's where this visa kind of splits into. One is the graduate work stream, and then the other one is the post-study work right. Without getting into really the specifics of that, all I need to do is, just for the ease of this presentation, so that we know, because you guys know what this temporary visa is all about. So if you've basically studied a trade course, or you've done a certificate 3, 4 diploma of some sort, then you are eligible for the graduate work stream, which is an 18-month visa. You get that. What and how the requirements are very similar to the post-study work right, which is someone who has done a bachelor's or higher qualifications. So that is a 2-year visa. So we will go into maybe a series of 7 or 8 very specific requirements that you need to meet the eligibility requirements. Okay, so just understand that. So if you've done a trade course, you've got a graduate work stream. Then if you've done a master's or bachelor's or higher, then that's a graduate work, post-study work right, sorry. So that's a 2 years visa. And that visa, by the way, is the one that is eligible also for a 485 extension. Okay, so we are going to get some questions that says, hey, hang on, am I eligible for a 485 extension? Let me tell you from the outset, only if you qualify for the post-study work right and you've studied and lived in a regional place. At the moment, Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane don't qualify for that. Then you're not eligible for the extension. So that's another consideration we'll have. I'm bet my bottom dollar, which I have very little of, that we will get a question on that. So without further ado, so let's talk about some of the basic requirements. So if you studied, you have a visa, it's about to end, you are basically eligible to apply. When you have the first and foremost thing, you need to bear in mind that you have a lot of funny scenarios for people. They fail to understand things like, oh, their visa was about to end, they applied for a visa extension, student visa, that is, they want a bridging visa, and the student visa wasn't granted, but more than how many months have lapsed, and then they suddenly says, oh, I've finished my course, I've done my transcripts, I've done my everything else, and I want to apply. Just remember, the basic fundamental requirement is you must have held a student visa in the last 6 months, okay? And you have had not more than 6 months from when you've been given your letter of completion. So those are the overriding, if you like, requirement for the 485 visa. So once again, if you've most of you, I dare say, would have had a visa, let's say, for ease of an explanation. Let's say your visa is ending in 15th of March. You are at this part of the course and you are finishing your studies, and this is November. You get your results, you get everything else, and your university or your college, wherever you are, gives you what is called an LOC, Letter of Completion. So from that time that you had a letter of completion, you have 6 months in which to apply for the visa. So just remember that, okay, very important. That doesn't mean that you wait for 6 months. It says, oh, it's okay, I've got 6 months. It's not also that your visa is ending in March, because you cannot be more than 55 days without any visa or any activity. So just remember that. That's another little consideration to have. But coming back to the 485, if you finish, you got your letter of completion, you got your transcripts, you will need your Australian Federal Police clearance, meaning that you would have had proof to say that you've applied for it. We need a receipt. The AFP can take 6 days, 7 days, or in some cases 6 months, where they've emailed you or they mailed you and you didn't get it and you forgot about it. So a lot of funny things can happen. So make sure that when you apply, chase up, follow up that somebody hasn't misplaced your AFP and whatnot. So you just need to have that LOC, letter of completion, transcripts, Australian Federal Police clearance, and your insurance. Insurance, obviously, you have at the moment when you're on your student visa, you have the overseas student health cover, right? So what you will need for this, because it's a temporary graduate visa, you will need to apply for the overseas visitors cover. So now if you're happy with your existing insurance provider, you just really need to go back to that and says, hey, I'm applying for this, I want to do my 485, and they will understand that. They will say, oh, okay. Now, if you've already paid 6 months, 4 months, 3 months into your existing overseas student visa, a bit of a trick or a tip, if you want to call it, go back to your provider and says, hey, because you've paid for it. So sometimes they do a pro rata, they give you some money back, and why not? As a student, you get any money that you take, and then you can just use that cover from when you want to apply. Unlike the overseas student health cover, where you have to pay for the duration of your course, here you just have to pay, basically you get a cover, get the coverage that you have, but you pay monthly, not for the duration of your 2 years visa or your 18th month visa. So that's another good tip to have. Today is all about tips, okay? Now, then you have the medicals. Now, if you've extended a student visa or you've applied for something and you've done your medicals, in other words, in the last 1 year, the medicals are valid. But what's happening is, assuming today when you launch your visa, and if you've done your medicals, which presuming it is, if it's still within the 1 year, then it won't show that medicals are required. But when the case officer picks up your file, which is another little thing that is happening, the current processing time seems to be just growing. So it's between, I think, 5 to 8 months, I dare say, of looking into the grant of a 485. So, and when that comes up, by the time your visa, your medicals would have expired, so you would be subjected to do another medical. They will request some information, and then you can go ahead and do that. So, yeah, just thought I'd put that in perspective. If you're very lucky, like a client of mine was at the beginning of February this year, of course, can't name names. We did this person's application and we launched, and his visa was granted in 19 minutes. Yep, 19 minutes. We thought it was an error. We thought we launched, they give you a bridging visa. We were about to forward that to the client, and my admin and I had a look at this. Whoa, hang on, this is actually a grant. So apparently, if it's a decision-ready application, if everything else is ready, you might just get a grant. Now, some people prefer not to because of various reasons, or some, in this particular case, the client was very happy. He was a software engineer, and not because the software engineer got it for 19 minutes though, but it just so happened that it worked out well for him. He was happy. He kind of moved on to whatever he wanted to do. So just remember that can happen. So among other things besides the insurance, we're talking about the all-important Ielts or PTE. So you need to have that, and You need to, if you've Ielts, you need to have overall 6, nothing less than 5, and if it's PTE, overall 50, nothing less than 36. If you've done any one of these English exams in the last 3 years, yep, 3 years, it's valid. I know you're thinking, hang on, but the results thing says that it's valid for 2 years. Exactly. This is another one of the questions that we get a lot of the times. And a lot of students sometimes save money when they realize, oops, they did something in the last 3 years in 2019 or 2018 or whatever the month was, depending on when you're going to apply, you save some money. So it's 3 years, which is pretty good. Today, if you launch your application today and if it's valid today, that still counts. It's not that if suddenly 5 months down the track, the case officer picks up that he's at the time of application, you had that, you're safe. So don't worry about that. PT is very important, or Ielts if you want to call it. And then you have, well, if you're a partner, in this case, you would need your partner's AFP as well, which is Australian Federal Police. And you also have to bear in mind that your partner doesn't need English. It's just you, but the AFP is required. You do not require overseas police clearance, which is good. So, because it's a temporary graduate visa for down here. And I think by and large, if you have those, so I'm just having LC, transcript, AFP, PTE, insurance, your medicals. You don't need a skills assessment unless you were in a situation where you were here before, 2011, and you did a master's program where you were studying, or you did a bachelor's. You then need to demonstrate a skills assessment, provisional, not a full. So all of that stuff, it doesn't apply to you. Then you don't need to do a skills assessment. So by and large, you don't require that. Another important thing is that your occupation needs to be on the medium to long-term skills list. So a lot of people fail to understand that, like, oh, gee, how? So there's that sort of consideration at the same time. So be mindful of that. If you have all of these things that I've just mentioned, then you don't have to worry about some of the things that they're going to ask you. In there is also a form 80, which is a personal particulars form that you would have to fill up. And that's where a lot of students get a bit worried and question, like, oh, can I or should I provide my overseas qualifications at the same time? Why not? Because in there, whatever that you have provided before when you was on your initial student visa or in moving forward, it's okay. You can actually claim, you can not claim, but mention that this is where you did and what you did. Okay. They would also want to know where you lived in the last 10 years. So if you've lived anywhere for more than 12 months in the last 10 years, you will also be required to bring or do an Australian Federal Police, a police clearance from that respective country. So for Australia, you will need by default, or your home country, not required. So this can be asked. This is what I'm trying to say to you. Although I said earlier on that overseas PCC is not required. In some funny cases, I've had an Irish guy, for that matter. I don't know why the case officer actually asked that information, and we were both bemused, but it was actually a request, and then he did that, and just took a little bit more longer to get that. Now, I'm just thinking of it. By and large, when you apply, you get a bridging visa. Now, when you get a bridging visa, it's really the same rights. Again, one of the questions we will have students ask us that, oh, now I have applied. The example I gave you just now, let's say your visa is ending in March next year. You've applied today, and it takes about 5 to 8 months for the grant of this visa. Meanwhile, you want to work because officially summer is in. If you're in Perth, you know what I'm talking about. You want to work, you want to do that. It is as if you are on your semester break. Provided you don't have a COE to do anything else, you have met your course requirements and your visa is ending, you can work. It's a bit of a gray area because you finish your studies. It's as if that is in place. So just remember that. Sometimes employers want to say, oh, give me proof that you got work rights and all that kind of stuff. So if you have that sort of funny situation, just contact me and I'll tell you how to get around that situation, okay? Now, for those who have done, say, their trade course, Just remember one thing, like a little bit of a suggestion at the same time, because you need to do, if you are in that situation that you have to do your job ready program, remember that you need to do a provisional skills assessment. So you will need to apply for what is called a job ready program, which is your provisional skills assessment, which is the 360 hours. So if you have to do that, that's another step that you need to have in order to meet the requirements to apply for your 485 visa. In other words, you just need to show proof that you've applied for that. That provisional skills assessment can take 1, 2, or 3 months. Okay, basically 1 to 3 months for them to approve it whilst you're waiting for your 485. Just remember, so 485 will not be granted once that process is okay. So case in point, the popular questions normally people ask is, oh, I'm doing cookery, I've done my 3, 4 and diploma, when can I do my provisional skills assessment? Okay, as soon as you've done your 4, you can start. You do your 360 hours, you know what that is all about. You can use 360 hours from the college that places you. You have a logbook, your hours that you work, or you work somewhere, your pay slips, you can add that 20 hours a week once, remember, when it's permissible, or any other time when you're allowed to. Or you can combine both. Okay, either or both, whatever that you want to make the 360 hours. So you need that, just remember, in order to apply your 485. Look, I want to give you, as I said just now, I want to give you a story of a particular case where, obviously I can't name this client now. She came, she did her MBA, and she was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do because there's no occupation this, I don't have a PR and everything else. I don't want to apply my 485. Why? Because she knew then that you can only apply your 485 only once. So she didn't want to burn that bridge. So she was advised by someone else, hey, why don't you do your MPA? So she signed up because she found that, oh, accounting maybe is on the list, and which was anyway. And she finished her MPA. She came to me about, I already said she, so obviously she's going to be anonymous. So she applied for her 485 on her own. She came, we give free 485 consultations, not an issue. We sat down, did all of that. She goes, yeah, fantastic. True story. About a month and a half ago, she just came and she goes, oh, I got my 485. I said, oh, fantastic, congrats. But she got a refusal. I was like, whoa, what happened? I'm trying very hard not to name her because it was really a very sad case. MBA, MPA, as a combined more than $100,000 in fees. Did her 485 application by herself because it was easy, wasn't it? How easy is it to do a 485 application? Let's just ask her. Because the refusal letter stated very clearly she did not attach her Australian Federal Police clearance. True story, Anna. This is amazing. So she came and I was looking at her, I was like, oh, wow, what happened? You know what was her answer? She said in my office, she goes, my friend said it was not required. I cannot make this thing up. She's looking at me, I'm looking at her. She's sort of semi-teary in her eyes and all that. I'm like, you just shot yourself in the foot. Because had you even applied but failed to attach, would not have been a problem. You didn't even apply. Why? Because your friend said it was not required. So I don't know. In all my years of doing this, sometimes when I hear a student tells me all that, I'm thinking, how did that happen? How could you not come back to the same person who told you in the free consultation? I'll break it down. I normally write down free, brilliant. You need an AFP. You need an AFP. You need proof to have applied. None of that happened. Went to the friend. So just remember, please come see, talk, find out, because you don't want to ruin this opportunity. So anyway, we applied her AAT, which is another $3,000. My fees separate. Guess what? She's on an AAT right now, and she will not win this case because they're going to say you didn't have any proof after all. So she's buying time, and poor girl, but luck was lucky for her. She got an invite for 491, and Section 48 has been lifted. So all those wonderful things has happened and saved her. But oh my God, don't subject yourself to that. So That's one. The other example I wanted to give you was, and by the way, this AFP is such a common thing. A lot of them think, oh, it's not a requirement. It is a requirement. Now, one of the other things that happens a lot of the time is when someone realizes, oops, I've been studying, I've been partying more like it. I forgot that I need to lodge my 485 visa. I finally got my letter of completion. I finally got everything else. I'm about to lodge. And then I realized that my Ielts or PT is expired. People have actually just said, well, I don't care, I'll just lodge and I'll make a reason. They've come back. These are real cases, again, real cases. If you don't have evidence that you have sat for an English exam, passing it is another matter which you need to pass because you already know what the requirements are. You need to show proof that you've sat for the test. Now, some people don't. Some people say, oh, because it's expired, what am I going to do? Well, don't be silly. Don't do something harsh, because the case in point, this student did that, was in that situation. Visa, imagine, had expired today, and then 2 days later, this person came out from this cave, wherever this person was, and then rang the immigration. And the immigration says, oh, you poor thing, you're a student visa, your visa is expired, you better quickly get onto a visa. And this is, you're talking to the immigration, and the immigration officer says, oh, I think you better apply for a bridging visa E, because now you don't have a visa. And this student, unbeknown, freaked out, scared, called the parents, don't know what to do. Oh, quickly, still never contacted us, applied for a bridging visa E. Don't do that. And in this particular case, this bridging visa E was granted within 3 days. So if you're in a situation, things just happen and you're still within 28 days of having your visa last expired or something of that has happened, there are ways in which you can get around in ensuring that you still save this all important opportunity to launch the wonderful 485 visa. I like that. Why? Because it is your opportunity to work, stay, live, do whatever you want to do. Go offshore if you like now, since you can, because the borders are open, whilst you're on the 485. It's your right. So, and it's your right to also find an opportunity if you are in a trade course to do your job ready program, or if you studied something that requires you to have 1 year of post-qualification experience. This is your time to work, get the requisite experience. If you need to do your PY or professional year, or if you just need to work to get 1 year's point. So all that can happen during your 485 is what I'm saying to you. So if all this information sort of sits well with you thus far, and if you have questions, which I don't know whether you are actually posing any questions, now I got to look at my colleague across sitting from me. If she says thumbs up with that questions, we can get into 485 questions, okay, the grad visa. While I have a little bit of a sip of water, let me know how we're going with the questions, Anna.
I've got only a few questions because, as usual, everyone thinks it's too easy.
Yep. And also perhaps because it's well, actually it's also quite timely for some people to apply because their visas maybe and I'm finishing maybe in Jan or Feb or March. So if you're in that stage, then you can ask. But that's cool. Maybe you're just still collating some information of yourself, but that's fine. So we thought we'd give you a head start by telling you a little bit more about it. Let's see or hear what the questions are for what we have for what is worth right now.
Meet Patel is asking, hi there, is it compulsory?
I know this name very well. Okay.
Is it compulsory to book medical within 3 months after getting Hep IB?
Yeah, because they give you 90 days. They stipulate that for 90 days. Now, if for whatever various reasons, in the height of the pandemic, you couldn't go because most of these places were not user-friendly, so you couldn't go there for dates changing and this kind of stuff, then you write to the ME and you let them know you could extend. But as of now, I think it's pretty fair to say that it's very hard for you to say that you aren't able to get this thing done within the 90 days. So just remember that. Yeah, so it is, yes.
Another question is Gonzalo Sanchez. Hello, can I work full-time as soon as I complete my studies and before applying for the 485 visa and receiving my completion letter?
Wow, this guy's eager to work. Okay, well, this is how this thing pans out, right? Like I said, if you finish your requirements, you've met whatever that is happening, and you're within and it hasn't kicked into your semester break or finish or anything of that sort. While if you're still under proper term conditions, if you want to call it, I'll be very careful to go out there and start working straight away just because you think you have finished earlier. All right, so it doesn't really work like that. You're still subjected to 20 hours a week until you have an actual semester break or holidays. So just remember that, not just because of you ticking the boxes and saying, I've done my letter of completion, I finish, before I apply, I'm done, I can work. No, it doesn't work that way, so just remember that.
That's it.
That's pretty much it.
There's
Sure.
one,
Yeah.
it's not a question, it's from Twinkle Patel. Last week we did the session about the WA state nomination, and she said she filled up the form and she's waiting for you to.
Ooh, on live, Twinkle. Maybe after this I'll come back to you. Maybe I was just too busy with Diwali, so I do apologize for that, Twinkle. So you're putting me live on that, and I will come back to you on that.
I've got one more question. Avi, I have lodged my 485 in March. Still waiting for response. Do I need to get my medical done ASAP or wait for them to respond?
Wow. Applied in March, but not gotten. Applied in March. Everything else is okay, but medicals. Have they asked him for medicals? Is that what he's saying? No, we don't know.
No.
So if you've applied in March and if they haven't asked you for a medicals just yet, then I mean you can't do medicals without a HEP ID. So whenever they ask you for medicals, it says organize your medicals. That's when you click or do or ask or whatever, whoever you'd use. And then with that HEP ID is when you then go to Bupa, and Bupa is the only one who then will organize. And when you finish that,
he has a HEP ID.
Then if you have a HEP ID, then HEP away. Just go and apply straight away, because that result, once you finish, it goes to the Commonwealth Medical Officer. They check, they assess, and you can see in there if it's all done. They just say no further action, medicals done or not required. That's the only time that happens. So in other words, if you're getting a request for anything, whatever that they may need to, AFP, Australian Federal Police Clearance, or you have provided something that is not clear, or suddenly we found out that, oops, this information is missing something else, that you had a surname that is different, and you're known by two different names. So you go and do all of that within the period of time, and these are the funny requests that can happen post-lodgement. Okay.
There are other questions about do I have pathway in Victoria and all these. We are not going to take that question. We're only going to stick to 485 visa.
Okay. The Tribal Council have spoken, as you all heard.
Yeah, so but they can always fill up the form that's attached to the comment, and they can send their questions.
Twinkle Patel, I will answer your question after this, and I do apologize. I'm happy to say that. Just been swarmed by several other things, as you can imagine, but you will get a response shortly. Now, look, it's one of those things, isn't it, where when one looks at it and says, it's just my graduate visa. Now, if you don't put the right information, you just don't give enough correct information on your Form 80, what do you think happens? That information stays sent. You can't just go back and say, oh, actually, by the way, this has happened. And which is why specifically I'm telling you. Now, if an information has been provided incorrectly, that's okay. No alarm bells down here. Provided you've known and you are aware, you can go back into that form and you can say, and you can choose, update details icon, drop down, and you see correspondingly notice of incorrect information. Click that, just 3 fields to fill. What was it? What is the correct information? And why was it done incorrectly, or whatever that you need to do? So you can say that. I mean, it'd be kind of silly if you were married, but then you tick single, and then after you press the button, you've paid for both fees, but your application shows that you've actually chosen the wrong answer. Those kind of things, you better go and tell them straight away. You don't want them to ask you 4 or 5 months and hang on, you're married, why did you claim you're single? Or if you had a passport change, by the way. And another thing, we got you online for whoever is still listening. So once you've applied and something changes, in other words, some information very material to name change, an address change, passport, child being born, divorced, married, whatever, these things the department wants to know, and then you need to let them know. You really let them know that, oh, I'm just letting you know this is happening while you're processing my application. So don't just assume, like a client says, oh, I was married, but then now I filed for a divorce. I didn't inform the department. I just thought the department would know. The department has got no idea you're divorced. The department has got no idea how happy or sad you are. Okay, just remember that. Yeah.
Karanveer, hi sir, I'm in Perth and my 485 visa is expiring. Is there any condition to get extra 1 year of 485?
Extra 1 year. Your 485 is expiring. Yes, that's the thing I said in the fourth minute. Meaning, if you are in the post-study work rights stream and you've applied and you've lived in WA, you haven't lived anywhere else, and you've met the requirements, you are clearly eligible for a 1 year extension. So before your existing visa expires, come see me, talk to me, whatever you need to. We'll tell you what to do, and you apply for an extension, which, say your visa is expiring tomorrow, you apply today, you get a bridging visa for 1, 2, 3 months. After 3 months is when your 1 year starts, when they grant you that. So they don't take these 3 months into consideration. So just remember that at the same time. So yes, if you are in a post-study work right, yes, you are eligible for the extension.
MK Singh, I have applied for 485 but unable to get any dates for medical. Looks like there are no dates until February. Any suggestion or provider for medical besides Bupa?
Bupa is the only one. You cannot go anywhere else, because if you do, then you have a problem. So you just need to if you've had an official request from IMI, which I suspect you have, then you need to let them know that, hey, look, these are the dates I've tried. They don't know what you are trying. They, as in the IMI, have just requested you, I need ABC. You need to tell them, well, guess what? I've tried. This is currently my timeline. As you can see, when you tell them this is what's happening, then they will know that you have tried in good faith to try to apply, and you just don't have the time to go and do it, or I say no availability. Let them know. And then they'll say, oh, okay, cool, no problems. You let me know, they decide, and then you both agree on a certain given date. And this is what happens.
Jason is asking, is it okay to apply for 485, let's say 2 weeks before your student visa expires? Also, is it okay to work full-time as soon as I complete my mechanical engineer degree? I have received a permanent full-time contract.
Okay, so simple, cool, and straightforward question. You can apply 2 days, 2 weeks before your visa is about to expire. That's not a problem, okay? Number one. Can you work full time? Like it's already said, if again, I've said this again, I'll say this to you one more time. If your visa was such that you finish your studies, you've about to launch the 485, or you haven't launched the 485, just remember that you need to, if you don't have a COE, if you're not studying, if it's not a semester break yet, or if you, just doesn't mean that let's say your holidays was in June, July, and then your course starts, and then your holidays again in December, January, February. And if you just happen to finish yours in September and says, oh, I want to work full time, if you can demonstrate that you have met all the course requirements, it's all finished, you don't have anything else, you need to kind of let the department know there's a little way of how you go about doing that. So just be careful. Don't just go and work just because you think I've finished everything else. So because I'm getting a job offer, I want to work full time. Because what's your primary visa? You still are on a student visa. You just don't go up and take a job offer and start working full time, because you can't. Just remember that. Okay, you have visa conditions to abide by, and that's why they are there.
Hans is asking, is it true that it's harder to apply for another student visa after you have finished your 485 visa?
Absolutely not. Don't suspect that to be any problem whatsoever. As a matter of fact, people who have done masters or bachelors and whatnot, good question actually. Funny enough, I was going to raise this in some way, but you prompted me. So you studied something else at a master's or bachelor's, and then you've done your 485, and for whatever options were not there, or you didn't get an invite, or something has happened, and you say, so I don't want to go back, I want to apply for another student visa. You don't have to apply for a bachelor's or master's level because you've already held that level before. After your 485, you can go do a trade course, or sorry, not a trade course, but yeah, like a diploma or something like that. No problems, you can get that. And you're onshore, highly likely you will get the visa. Okay, so don't worry too much about that. Of course, don't go and suddenly do a super change like, goodness me, accounting, and suddenly you want to go and do nursing, then that's another requirement altogether. So listen, you are going to be faced with this kind of stuff, I suppose, when you're actually doing it. But when you're listening to this now passively, you're thinking, oh, well, it's not related to me right now because I haven't lodged, I haven't got my letter of completion, I haven't applied my AFP. So when you are coming to that situation, or if you're faced with that, let me know when the time is there. If you wanted to revisit this, or if at any point in time you had another question, feel free to ask me. Literally, I think you have our contact. About the 485 temporary graduate visa, we can literally tell you what it is, and I think we are pretty much done from our standpoint. If there was any other question that you still wanted to offline, why not do that? Twinkle, for the fourth time, twinkle, 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 little star. I'm going to come back to you. I'll tell that to you. All right, signing off, Dharmindher from Aussizz, Canningvale. Hopefully you have a brilliant day, because I am, absolutely.